Welcome to another episode of Bitcoin Magazine Live. I am your host, Q, coming to you once again from my mother's basement. I have let the flow come out. Thank you all who joined us last night on our election special, but we are not done yet. P, my fellow co-host, my fellow one-letter extraordinaire, how goes it in your neck of the woods?
It goes quite well. This Bitcoin price is wild. I'm backing up the truck. That's probably what you can hear in the background.
Really? That's what I hear, not the incessant clucks of all of the chicken that for some reason you let into your office studio today?
That's for a different reason. But yes, you're also hearing that.
We have a jam-packed episode for you all today. We are not going to be having a new episode of Fed Watch. We will be joined by none other than Jason Maier, the author of the upcoming book, The Progressive Case for Bitcoin, on the heels of last night's election. I think this is a very timely discussion that we are going to have, and I am very excited for it, and I hope you guys are all triggered by what we talk about today. And then, of course, let's kick things off with some Bitcoin Magazine news on this Wednesday, November 9th. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to start with what I think is one of the funniest stories out there, and that is the update from all of the FTX debacles, but more specifically, all of the celebrities involved, ranging from Tom Brady, Gisele Bundchen, down to my personal favorite, Shaquille O'Neal, are all known as being FTT bag holders. For those who maybe don't watch football in the way that I do, and I appreciate Tom Brady, some may consider the GOAT, others may just consider like the most obnoxious person in the world. Whatever side of the coin you take, everyone knows he is going through a divorce. A lot of sports pundits have been saying this man is going through this divorce because he retired and then unretired, but I dare say there's a whole other reason, far more nefarious reason. If you may recall, back in April, after what is considered the greatest Bitcoin-only conference in the world, the Bitcoin conference in Miami, which we will be back in Miami May 18th through the 20th. Shortly after that conference, there was a shitcoin conference held by none other than Sam Bankman-Fried down in Bahamas called Crypto Bahamas, where Gisele Bundchen found herself on stage with him. And, you know, they looked to be getting a little too friendly, if I may dare say. And now there are reports coming out that Gisele and Tom have their entire wealth tied up in FTT. And dare I say, no, Tom, it is not your fault that you had to unretire to save your family from going bankrupt because your wife aped in to her, I don't know what a male mistress is called, but whatever her male mistress decided to tell her to buy. So poor Tom Brady had to unretire just to put food on the table for his family. I truly feel sorry for him. Gisele Bundchen, you are truly awful. Also, personally, I don't like Tom Brady, so let that be known in case anyone here thinks I am sympathizing.
Yeah, it's rough when you make terrible financial decisions. You pay the price, my friends. You pay the price.
Yeah, no, I agree. I am an avid Tom Brady hater, being a Jets fan. I proudly wear that. But also, I'm coming to you live from Q's mother's basement as well, in the other room over. But, you know, how's it going, everyone?
Yeah, it's good to see you. How many cockroaches have you seen so far? Are there a lot of them? You know, a ton of them?
You could survive. You would survive quite well here with your bug.
Yeah, to be clear, I'm asking because it's an extra source of protein. Like, you can just jump in there. I know you're trying to save sats. I mean, we got to talk about it, you guys. The Bitcoin price, fucking crazy. What do you guys think is going on? Obviously, we talked about FTX. Is this the reason for this? What other factors are there involved?
I got a hot take.
Hit me with it.
So, I'm getting feedback.
Fixed.
Funny how I just kick Chris off the stream and it fixes itself. Hang on. No, okay, I don't have any more feedback. P, you were clearly fucking with me. So I posted yesterday on my Instagram page, just like, hey, if you've got money in FTX, if you just are leaving crypto or even USD and FTX, I think it might be a good time to take it off. I was then flooded with DMs and text messages from normie friends, many of whom I haven't talked to, some since college, asking me like, is this the moment where I should sell everything? Should I be liquidating? Like, is Bitcoin going to zero? Is everything crashing to zero? And I do believe Normie Land, not in tune really with what the news is panic selling right now in a moment of capitulation. And we're seeing the effects of that. And again, we live in an echo chamber in the Bitcoin space, and within the broader Bitcoin ecosystem. So unfortunately, like, we're not going to see those conversations happening amongst less, like, I'm not going to say Bitcoin minimalists, but just like non-Bitcoin maxis, and those conversations they're having around, oh, maybe this isn't a good opportunity to be holding Bitcoin, at least for right now. Maybe some of them just believe this is the end of Bitcoin or crypto as a whole. Whatever it may be, though, we are not as exposed to those conversations. And I do believe there are those conversations happening outside of Bitcoin circles. And that is what is forcing this price lower and lower, which, to that I say, sell me your cheap Bitcoin. Please give me your cheap Bitcoin.
Yeah, I'll add a take to that as well. I think there's a couple things. I think Greg Foss kind of always says, like, you don't sell what you want to sell, you sell the thing that's most liquid. And I think when Bitcoin trades 24/7 with a lot of these crypto exchanges going down, a lot of times, like, it's not like as traditional as the financial markets, or not as gentleman's agreement where, oh, you have 48 hours to like hit this collateral limit. It's like, no, like, in the cryptocurrency space, I hate saying this, but like, when you hit a strike price, it liquidates immediately. Like, there's no like, oh dude, like, we'll just, there's no fractional reserve banking to prop up the system. So a lot of times people will sell Bitcoin in order to cover their margin calls. So I think part of it is they're selling their Bitcoin to cover it. I know there was a couple people on Twitter tweeting about, like, yeah, with FTX going down, Coinbase may be in trouble, Qcoin may be in trouble, Genesis may be in trouble. So I think a lot of people that may be swimming naked are trying to cover their positions to not get liquidated. So I think a lot of that's the downward sell pressure on Bitcoin, at least in my perspective.
Yeah, I think it's super interesting. I don't know, you guys can hear it. That's the truck. I'm just backing straight up to the exchange, taking that Bitcoin off other people's hands, putting it straight into cold storage. Yeah, it'll kind of get louder, and then maybe, hopefully I'll be able to get it to go down. But no, I'm kidding, obviously. I agree with everything you guys both just said. People sell the most liquid asset they can when they get margin called, when they have to. I'm curious, Q, what is happening in the broader market right now? Is everything down, or are we just focused on the Bitcoin price? I wouldn't know because I don't even track on the S&P 500 anymore.
So we are seeing sell-offs on the broader markets as well, kind of in the vein of what I said yesterday. However, we're seeing, Nasdaq down 1.4 as of right now, Dow Jones down 1, S&P just under 1%, like at 0.98, it's down. However, important to note, the volume is lower today, and I express the importance of when volume is higher or lower will sort of dictate and tell you, like, oh, this moved down. The way I read it is it doesn't have meat behind it. There's no substance. And so in turn, I don't actually expect this downturn to hold as strong. That could literally change tomorrow, and you could see another down day with higher volume, and then all of a sudden your tune changes. You just have to sort of absorb what the market tells you day by day. And based on an up day on higher volume yesterday and a down day on lower volume today, I don't think the broader markets are necessarily seeing a sell-off in the same vein. Now, I say this with the caveat of I'm not actually looking at volume being traded on Bitcoin. So that being said, the price going lower, it's safe to say there are more sell orders than buy orders right now on the open market.
Yeah,
and
I think
I say, sell me your cheap coin.
I think part of this is also, yesterday, obviously, FTX, after, CZ and SBF have been kind of going back and forth. We talked about how, CZ kind of started shitting on FTX and calling out the fact that they were selling off their FTT token. That drove down the price even further. Sam Bankman-Fried, scammer that he is, was like, everything's chill. Don't even trip. We got plenty of money. Don't worry. And then suddenly he announced, oh, just kidding. We are being acquired by Binance, CZ's company. Now, this morning, what has happened, though, is it looks like Binance, as people had suggested yesterday in the Twitter space that we did with Dylan LeClaire and Greg Foss and Pete Rizzo, they actually are not interested in purchasing FTX. And they posted actually that after starting due diligence and everything, they were like, oh, this is a garbage fire. Like, we're getting the fuck out. And my perception is that is what has kind of kicked off this brief dip in the price of Bitcoin. So the trials and tribulations, they were over leveraged. They got wrecked. Let's dig into it. On that note, CZ actually posted on Twitter. He's basically scolding Sam Bankman-Fried like a parent. He said, two big lessons, never use a token you created as collateral, and don't borrow if you run a crypto business. Don't use capital efficiently, quote unquote, have a large reserve. Binance has never used BNB token for collateral, and we have never taken on debt. So he's just taking a final opportunity to be like, you come at the king, you best not miss, go fuck yourself. And then also be like, also, my company's good.
Yeah, I mean, there's no way for me to verify, or I don't trust CZ, and there's no way for me to verify that he has or hasn't taken on debt. So I'm not going to be the one to challenge that. But I think stay humble, stack sats, use Odell's model. Yeah, and keep it in self custody. If there's anything that's shown, like FTX is what, the third largest exchange, second largest exchange in the world, and they're going insolvent. Like if you had Bitcoin on that exchange, I'm not trying to be mean, but you are an unsecured creditor and you are last on the pecking order to get paid back. So I hate to say this, but like there's a good chance you may never get it back, or there's going to be a long legal process. Like the Mt. Gox people, it's been 8 years and haven't gotten their Bitcoin back. So I hate to say this, but like you may get paid back, but it might be 10 to 30 cents on the dollar. So you like lose a lot of that, or you don't get paid back at all, and it's part of the debt proceedings. So
or you get paid back in fiat instead of Bitcoin,
Yeah,
and then you
yeah,
get like today's
exactly.
price, which would be terrible. I feel really bad for people that are in the situation. Has FTX officially frozen withdrawals at this point?
They did yesterday. They halted
Ugh.
withdrawals. They halted withdrawals probably at 2 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Eastern yesterday. So, to the best of my knowledge, it hasn't opened up yet. They said that they were trying to get the deal done in order to make customers whole. Obviously, if the Binance deal went through, they would start allowing customers to withdraw. But
No, not necessarily. You can't count on that. I mean, like we literally just saw this happen with Celsius. Obviously, Celsius didn't get acquired by Binance, but I mean, this is the playbook, right? Just like yesterday when SBF was like, "We're cool, we're chill, don't even worry," and then before that, Do Kwon with Terra Luna was like, "Hey, deploy more capital, steady lads." That's an actual tweet. These people they say the same thing because they're desperately trying to maintain customer belief in their platform, and then as each of those levels get taken out and they become sort of exposed as being those claims being fraudulent, they just delete them, as SBF did yesterday. So do not trust anything that comes out of official, FTX accounts. Do not trust anything that comes out of, SBF's account. They are desperately trying to prevent even more dams from bursting and people from moving away as rapidly as possible. I also want to flag David Bailey, CEO of Bitcoin Magazine, tweeted out that in his opinion, Genesis is also facing significant risk and insolvent. And he mentioned somebody else as well. If we can call that up, I forget who it was. The point is, if you have your money, that is to say your Bitcoin, on exchanges, you need to withdraw that Bitcoin if you can as rapidly as possible, because in these types of situations, as we talk about a lot, you start seeing these contagion effects and it can have ripple effects and more exchanges can become insolvent. And as you just said, Chris, you mentioned pecking order. That's a chicken term, as everyone knows. I'm obsessed with chickens right now because my wife was like, I want chickens. That's a literal term. They peck each other. They sit on roosts above one another. The chickens that are at the low end of the pecking order literally have to roost below the other ones. And guess what happens? They get shit on all night long. You, as an unsecured investor, you're literally at the bottom of the pecking order, as Chris just said, and you're getting shit on from above, from all those chickens above you. Do it safely. Do not listen to this podcast and just be like, oh shit, I got to withdraw my Bitcoin and then fuck it up. Because if you do that, there are no backsies. There's no one to protect you. There is no customer service line. So go watch some tutorials. Make sure you deeply understand what you are doing and take your financial future by the horns and withdraw your Bitcoin.
Yeah, and to iterate your point, one last thing to hammer home, like I feel bad. Like FTX did a huge marketing ploy. I mean, obviously they had so many Super Bowl ads, Tom Brady, Gisele, like so many commercials. So I feel bad for I guess the more normies that maybe have a smaller position in Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies, and now they're like, oh, they understand not your keys, not your coins, or I hope that they learn that lesson. And then also they learn the risk of other cryptocurrencies. I mean, we advocate for Bitcoin and Bitcoin only for that reason, and keeping it in self-custody and, don't trust, verify ethos. But Moving on to the U.S. government has a say in all of this as well. So obviously, we were talking about Binance potentially bailing out FTX. The U.S. government says that they don't want this deal to go through. It doesn't look like it's going to go through anyway, so it's not going to matter. But I find it very funny that FTX is based out of the Bahamas, and Binance is actually, fun fact, I didn't know this, based out of Malta. But they are trying to intervene and says that this deal will actually, potentially throw off it's a threat to the U.S. financial system, which is really funny that like two countries, like I guess the Bahamas is part of, is that under the U.S. like territories, I guess, or provinces?
I don't think so.
But yeah, it's just very funny that these two countries that are, Malta and Bahamas, and they're like, yep, this potentially could take down the U.S. hegemony here. These two small little countries, one little island and one little country, this may be a threat to us. We may have to neutralize this threat. Obviously, like I said, this deal doesn't look like it's going to go through. Also, on a better note, Jim Cramer has 100% success rate of being wrong all of the time. So the Jim Cramer remains defeated. The internet remains undefeated. Jim Cramer remains defeated. So he was saying just in June that Sam Bankman-Fried is like the CEO of JP Morgan, as many people know, Jamie Dimon. He's out here. He's bailing out people. He's helping out this industry. He is a brilliant man. He is like Warren Buffett. This dude is going to have a long legacy. Well, that legacy came to an end just 4 short months later when FTX looks like it's insolvent. So, stay humble, stack sats, and don't fall into the narratives like Elizabeth Holmes, which Jim Cramer also famously said is a genius, or any of these marketing ploys. That's just my 2 sats. QP, anything else you guys want to add to this?
It's just funny to me. I want to start first with we spent a lot of time talking about this in the spaces yesterday as well with Dylan, Rizzo, Greg Foss, Dr. Jeff. They all joined us, and we talked about how like SBF has like made himself to be this like altruistic, like kind, like I want to help the world. I want to make it better. I'm going to donate all of my wealth when I die, this, that, or the other. And it's just so clear and apparent that all he did was hire this publicist to go out and like create this persona and image for him. And I genuinely want to know, like, how much did he have to pay Jim Cramer to like be called the next coming of JP Morgan? Because like, David Bailey, can I just forego my next 3 bonuses to pay Jim Cramer that fee so that Jim Cramer says my name or Bitcoin Magazine live on his show? Because I genuinely think like we can buy it. I'm starting to believe that companies pay Jim
You have
Cramer.
so little faith.
I'm just trying to help the show grow a little bit.
He's trying to put us out of business here. He's trying to have
No, you're not understanding. Guys, for everyone who is watching, I hope all of you are subscribed, but if you're not, please press the subscribe button down below and like the stream. If we get to 100 likes, yeah, we're already at 45. If we can get to 100 likes before 2 p.m. Eastern time, Chris, can we get a carrot code for the audience? All right, we're going to do that, guys. So there you go. See, I'm just trying to help you. Like, I'm like SBF. I'm just trying to help you, right? But there's also a broader picture here, and it's not the idea that a company or a country like Malta is going to have any impact on the U.S. economy. It's the broader crypto industry will have an impact on the U.S. economy, and more specifically, the U.S. dollar. And that is where I think this fear stems from. So the growing rhetoric around crypto is bad is going to get a lot worse. You have SBF, who is the front man for crypto regulation and was almost like DC's darling, now completely falling apart. Like, you know the scene in Lord of the Rings when the fire demon like snaps his whip and like grabs Gandalf and like pulls him down in the mines of Moria?
Yeah, of course, where he's like, thou shalt not pass. And then he's like, oh.
Yeah, and then he tells everyone in the Fellowship of the Rings, like, fly, you fools. That's what he fucking said. He tells them to take the fucking eagles and just fly to Mordor, but no one understood him, so then they had to go on this stupid long adventure. Lord of the Rings could have been solved in 20 minutes if they just listened to Gandalf. But the point I'm trying to make is that SBF is like the fire demon, and watch him fucking like take one last whip up and try to take down something to do with the broader crypto ecosystem. Now, mind you, if you want to get rid of shitcoin casinos, I support that. Like shit, I will be the spokesperson supporting SBF if what he comes out and says is no more crypto casinos should exist. You should only be able to buy, sell, and hold your Bitcoin. That should just be what we have. But unfortunately, I don't think that his whip is only going to be like in the kindness of Bitcoin. And I think, unfortunately, Bitcoin will potentially have to duke it out with SBF and regulators as a byproduct of this.
I don't disagree at all.
So my next question before we go to the next story, though, P, who would you be in Lord of the Rings?
I mean, Jesus, no fucking clue. Probably, what's his name? Fucking, I wanted to call him Grendel. Obviously not Grendel. The little cave creature.
Gimli.
Fucking Gimlet. That's his name. I'll be Gimlet, and because I want the Bitcoin, you know, my precious, not gonna let it go.
I think.
What?
It's
Gollum
Gimli,
is
right?
his name.
What?
His name's Gollum. It doesn't matter.
Oh, Gollum. Oh.
Gimli is the dwarf. Gollum is the like
What he turns
creepy-
into. Got it. All right. Anyway,
Yeah.
I'd be that guy because I got the Bitcoin and I want to keep it. I'm not gonna let anybody else have it. They can all go fuck themselves.
I guess. I mean, I wouldn't have been surprised if you said Gandalf because like you are 1,001 years old. Which,
Of course.
Chris, oh my God, I buried the fucking lead for today. Okay, last night on the stream, in case you missed it, we had a fun little election special. P, myself, and Nolan. We sort of rapped about all of the different key races. P admit his brain is not in his head, and in fact is in a little jar just behind him on that shelf right there. To further validate our claims that we've always said, P is a sentient robot being sent from the future that freezes and unfreezes himself. This is why we say P is 172 years old.
It's true. I used to be a neuroscientist. I was scanning my own brain. There's a 3D printed model of my brain right there under the microscope. It's all fucked up because I'm crazy. Let's keep going though. I want to hit this next story. Meta just laid off more than 11,000 employees. Q, can you take us through what's going on there? What happened?
Did you say 1,000?
11,000.
Okay, yeah, I was about to say. I mean, it's really sad. Chris and I, we were talking about this last night. You know, when I picked him up from the airport before the cops pulled us over for zero reason whatsoever, just to harass a brown man. But ultimately, we've warned that this is coming. That these layoffs need to happen. These companies are struggling, especially, and this is going to be really important. And I want to pull this up actually at a stock right now. So today, oh my fucking God. All right. So today, literally today, 11,000 people lost their job at Meta. Chris, can you confirm the percentage of the workforce that this is? Now, we've already established that the NASDAQ is down almost 1.5%. So this is 13% of Meta's workforce. You want to know what Meta's stock has done today? They are up almost 7%.
No
on the day.
fucking way.
Because, and this is a very common occurrence in publicly traded companies, this reflects well for the future earnings of the company because you just cut 13% of your payroll. So your expenses just went down. So even if you keep operational income and the rest of your expenses at the same level, your next earnings report will reflect positively. All of these major publicly traded companies on the heels of these types of announcements have seen a bump up in their stock price. And it is no different in what is going on here in Meta. And it's sad. It's sad that you see people's lives being played with to raise a stock price a few percentage points here or there, when ultimately there were mistakes made by management in the way they grew. And whether or not you agree with the metaverse sort of shift by Zuck, and
You shouldn't.
you really shouldn't. Like, oh my God, you really fucking shouldn't. Look, this is unfortunately like a tried and true system. We are not done seeing layoffs. We are not done seeing layoffs from the tech industry to start because they are bleeding right now and it will continue to get worse and worse. And unfortunately, you will see it start to carry over into other sectors in as well.
Also, and I'm jumping around a little bit here, but on a related note, fucking Elon Musk fired too many people. Twitter has been begging certain key people that they fired to come back because in the the reaping that Elon Musk came in to do, or rather did when he came in order to really show a strong fist, a strong hand, they accidentally let go of some key people and they're begging them to come back. I hope those people make them pay them at least double and hopefully triple, because if you're in that situation, Jesus. Oh God. Yeah. Companies like this. I also think it's interesting to note that the stock price jumped with Meta. That would seem to imply that people bidding on the stock, on the price of a share, don't view these people as an essential component of the business or something. They're basically saying like, yeah, you can get rid of all these people and business will continue to be booming. Now, to me, that either means they don't think that they're actually providing utility, or they think that the company can magically become more efficient, or they actually understand what's going on, which is that stock prices are massively inflated rather. They're trading at such high premiums, and the actual value that a company produces has very, very, very little to do with the perceived value, and thus the stock price is massively inflated. But I digress. Another item that has come up recently, the U.S. Department of Justice announced that... You guys hearing music playing? Very weird. Q. Well,
Funny how I mute P's mic and I stop also hearing the music playing. P, you're an idiot.
my God, I figured it out. They're after me. The dump truck sound I was playing kept going, and you're hearing all sorts of random shit from it. Anyway, the point is, the U.S. Department of Justice announced that they have seized $3.36 billion in Bitcoin. This is a story from a little bit ago, but the interesting thing here is that it was connected with the Silk Road dark web kind of like fraud situation. James Zong pleaded guilty to wire fraud. They seized 51,680 Bitcoin. He then tried to convert he also tried to convert 50,000 Bitcoin Cash that he got in an airdrop into Bitcoin. And the interesting part of this story is that he accidentally doxed himself when he did this. Matt Odell had a tweet that we'll put in the either in the show notes or in the chat, really going through exactly how this happened. And the reason this is significant is because it's a privacy issue. He made one small mistake in this process, and they were able to link his identity back to exactly where he made some transaction on an exchange, find out who he was, and go after him. As things get crazier and crazier, this is someone who ostensibly did something illegal, but as things get crazier and crazier, as inflation increases, as we start to see more and more of this kind of global financial chaos, don't expect innocent people to not fall under these broad legislative swaths going forward. People who are innocent are already being persecuted, and that is only going to continue. You got to protect yourself. You have to understand how to transact privately and how to maintain your own privacy, which is your right, because you never know what that data is going to be used for in the future.
Also, I just want to, again, remind people on this note, like, we see it time and time again when criminals end up using Bitcoin, like, they somehow get caught because this is a public ledger. Because if someone really wants to, they can and will spend the time and resources to hunt you down and figure out what's going on. So dare I say, the idea or narrative that Bitcoin is used for illegal activities is the stupidest narrative. Because let me ask you this point blank. Do you really think the US dollar, just physical, cold, hard, greenback cash, is not used in any illegal transactions? Let me tell you, every fucking drug sale that's going to be done this weekend in Los Angeles is going to be done via cash. Every fucking under the table shady deal, people who don't pay taxes, all of that shit's done in cash. But sure, let's buy the narrative that, Bitcoin's used by bad actors. Bitcoin. You guys are idiots if you buy that narrative, just full stop. Come at me. I dare you to. Give me an example of where you can use Bitcoin successfully by a criminal. Please. Actually, tell Chris, because Chris is the Fed on the show, so he will actually make sure you get in trouble. So don't forget that part. I want to go to Twitter next. Cool. Twitter and payments. So look, in case you missed the news, Elon Musk owns Twitter. Besides all the stupid stuff, like now creating a new badge for official account, which it's a whole separate story. We've heard a lot of rumors and rumblings that PayPal could eventually turn into some sort of a payments type platform. For the love of God, Elon, longtime viewer, dear friend of mine, don't do Doge. Just don't. Stop trolling everyone with the Doge nonsense. I'm going to read a tweet, though, out from Caitlin Long. Signal, not noise. Well, of course, Elon Musk filed paperwork to get Twitter in the payments business, just as predicted. Banks, get ready to be disintermediated. Amid all this drama, this is real news. Hashtag Bitcoin, hashtag Lightning Network. This shouldn't come as a surprise. We saw Mark Moss last week also discussing, like, look, this is one of the core people involved with PayPal. The way Elon was involved, for those who aren't as familiar, he was the founder of X.com. X.com was acquired by PayPal. The truth, though, about that is X.com sort of payments platform itself was what PayPal wanted to acquire. And they actually used X.com sort of payment transfer system in the newer versions of PayPal. And that really helped PayPal scale up. In addition to just sort of this background, there are two key points. Also, David Sachs, who's a very vocal, one of the original people at PayPal as well, not one of the founders, just one of the, as he likes to say, he was hired because Peter Thiel needed someone to yell at that wouldn't cry when he yelled at them. So that was David Sachs's job, and now he's a billionaire. So honestly, if someone wants to yell at me and make me a billionaire, I welcome that. David Sachs is now on this new board that Elon Musk has also created. We've heard him also talk about the ideas of rolling Twitter out into some sort of a payment platform. Elon also 2 years ago went out and rebought the domain name X.com. Now, I'm not saying these are all connected, but like they're all fucking connected, because no billionaire does random crazy shit like tweet out, oh, should I buy Twitter, and thinking like he's going to just do whatever the audience does. Like, no, I'm sorry. If you think Elon Musk either bought Twitter or sold Tesla shares to pay taxes because of the Twitter poll he posted, you are so naive, my dear friend. Like, those plans were already in the works, and he did it more as a public perception more than anything else. He was going to do these types of things. So it will be interesting to see how these things roll out. I would love the opportunity to see Twitter become sort of this like break the bank system. It'll be interesting to see how Bitcoin gets involved in this. Trump is not Trump, Elon has very loudly become like the Doge father, if you will. And I don't give a shit what anyone says. Like, Doge is a shit coin just like any other ones. Cool. Awesome that they use proof of work. Like, awesome. They have that one up over Ethereum, but they still have like a million things below Bitcoin as a result. So it will be interesting to see how the broader crypto ecosystem also gets folded into Twitter. David Sachs, to bring his name up again, huge Solana bag holder as well. So this could be a step in the right direction of breaking up the banks. The broader issue here that I worry about is that he's going to open the door to the shitcoin casinos. And given everything with FTX, probably not the best idea, Elon. But,
Yeah. I just want to add one thing, and I think I saw a comment in the chat. Elon has given praise to China on multiple fronts. One of the things that he thinks that they do very well is WeChat, which is their form of like everything. It's like their social network. It's their way that they pay, people peer to peer. It's linked to their bank accounts. It's also linked to their identity. So like, I know many people have said in this space before, it's like a social credit system. I don't think this is going to be a good thing. And I don't think with making Twitter the WeChat of the West is a good thing because of that. I don't want to dare I say like he rolls out a central bank digital currency, but it's not too far reaching from like basically pairing up with a random cryptocurrency or governments to be like, hey, like you should use this Twitter native thing and tracking people's movements and stuff like that. I guess maybe that's my conspiracy hat going on, but we don't need WeChat in the West, or at least that's not what I want.
No, you're absolutely fucking right. It will be a terrible thing if Twitter starts collecting your financial information as well, because people will use it because it's the easiest thing to do. And then that data will be used against you. It will be weaponized, and we do not want to live in that world. We need to use systems that protect our privacy and disintermediate our financial systems, like Bitcoin. I put a link to a fantastic Bitcoin Magazine article about how to safely pull your Bitcoin off exchanges in the chat. I'll post it again in just a second, but I want to switch us over to our guest now. I want to remind everybody before we go to a quick break, and then we'll be back with Jason Maier talking about the progressive case for Bitcoin, that you can use code BMLive to buy tickets for Bitcoin 2023. You can save 10%. You can also use that code in our store on bitcoinmagazine.com to purchase a subscription to our magazine. The print mag is absolutely fucking incredible. We're about to come out with a new issue. You do not want to miss it. Finally, reminder to like and subscribe across our various channels. We post these, we do these videos Monday through Friday, and we have fantastic guests, and we talk about Bitcoin all the day, all the time. Let's go to commercial, and we'll be back in a bit.
Thank you for sticking through those commercial breaks, and I'm excited to introduce our guest today. He is an author of the upcoming book, The Progressive Case for Bitcoin. Jason Maier, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Q. I'm so happy to be here. I'm really looking forward to the conversation.
So, Jason, for our audience who is not as familiar with you, give us a little bit of a background. You are a teacher as well. Where do you teach? And of course, the golden question, or the orange question, of how did you first come across Bitcoin?
Yeah, so I'm a math teacher. I'm a high school math teacher in Connecticut. I teach at a private school up here. Just have always been into math and computer science and puzzles and things like that. Like probably everyone else, I have two like orange pilling moments, right? Like a few years ago, I found out that, oh, you can just like hook your laptop up to this thing called Slush Pool. And I couldn't get access through my school. So I drove to the next town over, hooked up in a McDonald's, used their Wi-Fi, and hooked my laptop up to, to Slush Pool. It must have been like 2011, 2012, something like that. And then didn't know what the hell I was doing, right? I thought that mining for Bitcoin meant like they're just searching through like a bunch of data, you know what I mean? Like, oh, we found it. And so didn't understand it, had no conviction, closed the laptop, never went back to McDonald's, and then, just forgot about it. Fast forward a few years, and I have a good buddy of mine who was into it and essentially was just like, hey, what are you doing with your stimulus checks? Like, you should be buying Bitcoin. Had really, again, like heard of it, obviously, and had a sense that it might be something to look into. So I did. I'm a completely risk averse person. And so my first Bitcoin purchase was for like $20. And then I said, oh no, I need to go learn about it. Like I need to learn as much as I can about Bitcoin. I'm already $20 into it. And if I lose this money, then I'm going to have to talk to my wife or something and explain what I did wrong. So that's how I got started. A buddy of mine said, hey, look at it. And I did. And my very first sort of exposure, I just want to learn how the technology worked. Had no sort of exposure to like the social layer of Bitcoin. Wasn't on Twitter or anything like that. I was just looking up like nuts and bolts, like what does a computer do? And so that, I got a conviction through that lens. And that was a couple of years ago. And, it's been a wild journey since. So, yeah.
I love that. And I feel like everyone has that, as you said, like sort of the two moments. The first moment where you're like, no, what is this? And then of course the second moment where like someone that you probably have to spend the rest of your life thanking actually took the time to be like, no, stop,
Right.
just ignore everything you ever learned about money, about
Mhm.
just everything,
Mhm.
and let's relearn this together.
Right.
Um,
And that's what it was like, right? You sort of have to relearn everything, and you start asking really hard questions that, if you can think back to like the beginning of your journey, like what is money, and not knowing, right? Not knowing the answer to that question, you're like what are we doing? And just like everyone else, like I dove head first, and the more I learned, the more I wanted to learn. The more I learned, the more I wanted to own it and to be a part of this. And of course, the more I learned, the more I wanted the people that I loved and care about around me to just like own it or understand it or learn about it. I think it's hard to really understand Bitcoin and not want other people to be involved with it too. So that's where I came from. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like this moral imperative, this like burning, like I have to talk about Bitcoin.
Yeah, right. Yeah. All the time. All the time.
Yeah, 24/7.
Yep.
well, I want to unpack. So, in your book, in the chapter that we were able to read, I think let's just start literally at that very first scene that you set the stage. I'm assuming we're in your classroom now,
Yeah.
and I'll let you sort of tell the story of what happened when you expressed, at least to your colleagues,
Mm.
your interest in Bitcoin.
Yeah. So in my department, in the math department, we have shared offices. So, like I have a desk, and, there's four other people in that office with me that have desks around me. And above my desk is, my little bulletin board with my Beatles posters and all that other stuff. And I decided one day I was going to come in, and I just printed off like on the school computer or printer, I printed off like 8.5 by 11 little like Bitcoin, Dr. Satoshi, a little like propaganda poster, and I put that up there on the bulletin board. And I didn't know what to expect at that time. I hadn't been in Bitcoin for a long time. This a couple of years ago. So my expectation was just to be laughed at, right? Like chuckle, like, oh, you're falling for a scam or something. You don't really understand what you're doing. And I thought maybe in my like best case scenario, I might find somebody else who's into Bitcoin that I worked with, right? Somebody would wander into my office, see that, and then strike up a conversation. And what I got was completely different. I just the woman who worked next to me and her desk was next to me saw that Bitcoin poster and absolutely, like, literally gasped. She's like, how could you do this? You're ruining the planet. And I don't want like the environment ruined for this fake money, and just sort of implying that I was like this monster and just doing this horrible thing. And I was like, shocked. Like I was shocked. I had no idea that was going to be the reaction. And that was an eye-opening moment for me. It's like, all right, this is a person who means well. She clearly cares about things in the world, and she has good intentions, and she's plugged into like Elizabeth Warren, right? Like she's hearing that kind of stuff, right? So that was just sort of a like an absolute turning point for me in my understanding of like what Bitcoin was and what it means to various different people that I was sort of ignorant to before that.
Oh, I want to spend a lot of time today, I think, unpacking like just that story, because we talk a lot on this show. Bitcoin is for everyone, and everyone means enemies too. And I think
Mhm.
that's something that gets lost, especially a day after an election that was so polarizing, where
Right.
everyone was pushing this us versus them narrative. Regardless of
Mhm.
what side of you are on, the narrative was always us versus them.
Right.
And we see countries like Russia and Iran openly admit that, hey, we're going to accept Bitcoin to finalize international trade.
Mhm.
Why? Why do we think countries that are sanctioned by the US and can't use the US dollar see viability in a currency that is both trustless and can have instant transactions completed? You're
Mhm.
also seeing these conversations here domestically from different pundits saying, hey, Bitcoin can help us. Look at the state of Texas, or Bitcoin is going to melt the polar ice caps.
Right.
your example of Elizabeth Warren.
Yeah.
I'd love to just, let's have this like roundtable discussion of like, we're going into Thanksgiving. P and I are banned from Thanksgiving family dinners. I had to call around to finally get re-invited just
Yeah.
under the guise of no Bitcoin talk. So I negotiated it down to I get 1 hour of a Bitcoin pitch, and I need
Yeah.
I need a little help framing this pitch. But like, how do we bridge this gap? Because you make mention in the chapter of it won't work if Bitcoin will not work if it becomes this idea that it's only for the right, it's only for Republicans, and you just leave 30, 40, 50% of the country just sort of like aside, not to mention the other half of the world as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
What are steps we can try to take to help bridge this gap?
Yeah, and I think what you just highlighted is the issue is like what I'm most afraid of, right? Like I sat down one day and realized that all of the resources that I had, like I was making an argument to my coworker, I was making an argument to the people around me that like I know and I care about, and I was able to have those conversations well. But like all of the resources that I was pointing people to learn more about Bitcoin, like not all, but a lot of them had either like an explicit right-leaning political like bent, or maybe an implicit, or it was just sort of assumed with like a wink and a nod, like obviously you're not like some, liberal communist, right? Haha. And so like I was just worried that there wasn't a resource out there to just sort of hand to people. And it's like you can have those conversations one-on-one. I think that the bridging the gap is really just sort of meeting people where they are, right? Like finding out like what it is that that they care about and figuring out how Bitcoin fits into that, right? There's no shortage of people on the left, like the political left in the United States, who think that we are going down the wrong path and like the system's broken and the system's rigged and like the system favors certain people over other people. This is like what you hear about, and what's missing from that conversation among those left-leaning people is like, can we zoom out a little bit and look at the system a little bit, more closely and say, hey, what are the pieces of the system that are broken, and how can Bitcoin potentially, resolve those issues, fix them, move us in the right direction? And so depending on what the person really cares about, then you can probably just sort of frame your conversation with that person in a more effective way. And like I said, I'm a teacher as my day job. That's what I do day to day. And so like the idea of connecting with people and figuring out what it is that's going to help them understand or resonate with them or motivate them to learn more. That's what I do, right? So it was exciting to have this idea, say, oh, there's a whole population out there of pre-coiners that don't really know a lot about Bitcoin. Like all they really know is like what they hear from maybe from political people on the left, or what they hear from the media. And there's a real vacuum to say, oh, Bitcoin is not a liberal thing or a progressive thing. But if that lens helps those people come to it and continue to learn more, then there's an opportunity there. The big fear and the motivator for me writing the book was I really saw the potential for Bitcoin to become a political football, like everything else, right? There's a list of 12 things, maybe even more. And if you tell me what you think about one of them, then I can tell you what you think about the other 11, right? Like that is sort of, we're so polarized and entrenched in our political beliefs. And I don't want Bitcoin to be one of those things. I want Bitcoin to sort of be like the internet or email. You use it and it doesn't imply anything about your political affiliation. So that was the motivation, is sort of avoid that. Not say that would definitely happen, but I feel like there's a risk of that. So that's my goal.
I think that's so important because, to your point, Bitcoin should be viewed as, like SMTP or, whatever specific internet protocol. It is that fundamental and that basic. And I feel like a lot of the arguments against Bitcoin, for whatever reason, are currently most associated with more left-leaning, political views. There's like ESG and all these things. And so it's why I'm so excited you're writing this book, because I think, you may not agree with, quote unquote, progressive political people or leaders, but you absolutely should want them, if you are a Bitcoiner, to understand the value of Bitcoin, because we have got to cut these false narratives out at the knees. And this is one of the most effective ways to do it, by creating, literature and by having conversations with people on all sides of the political spectrum so that we can really bring everyone together.
Yeah, and I think that's really the key question, right? There are millions, tens of millions of people out there who don't know a lot about Bitcoin and who vote for Democrats. And you might not like that. You might not like the fact that they vote for left-leaning politicians. That's fine. But the question is, who do you want to explain Bitcoin to them, right? Do you want like a liberal progressive Bitcoiner to explain it to them and sort of say, hey, here's how it works, here's why it's useful, here's where you can go to learn more? Or do you want Elizabeth Warren explaining Bitcoin to those people, right? Like, I mean, who do you want? Or I guess the third option is you just don't believe that Bitcoin is for everybody and, it's not money for everybody, right? Like, I guess if you want to just sort of cut out half of the population, like I'm not down with that. But if you go on the assumption that Bitcoin is for everybody, then we got to get the other half of this population like involved and excited and knowledgeable about it. Who do you want to do that educating? Do you want, like some politician out there who thinks that Bitcoin is, horrible? Or do you want somebody who can kind of like connect with these people, isn't going to they're not going to shut me out automatically just because of my political leaning? So I think that's a really critical question.
I want to piggyback, Jason, off of what you said, because I absolutely love it. And there's something inherently, I think, flawed in some Bitcoiners' logic, and some of them genuinely do get it. And the point I want to make is, Bitcoiners tend to be these freedom-oriented people. A lot of them like value freedom. But my challenge and my sort of call out is, do you believe in freedom for everything that you want to do, or do you believe in freedom for everything you also disagree with? Because to me, real freedom is not me getting to say everything that I think, believe in, doing what I want to do, but it's also those ideas that I don't agree with, having an environment and a place where they can be openly discussed and shared. Because that to me is what real freedom is. That this idea of, well, you said that thing and that's a bad thing because I said so that you can't have that idea. Like that, my friends, is not freedom. But many of you on Bitcoin Twitter try to push these types of narratives, just like how I like to point out Bitcoin Twitter. It hates cancel culture, but will always be the first people to cancel people. Now, I respect and love the fact that we no longer see Nick Carter's star rising. I do appreciate that to a degree. I urge us as Bitcoiners to get comfortable being uncomfortable, because the next 10 years are not going to be comfortable. It's not going to be a lot of Lamborghinis and mansions. It's going to be a lot more pain. Right. I want to present this question, and P, if you want to take it, I want to play out a few different scenarios. That I don't want to spend the whole time doing this, but like, let's play out a few scenarios while we have Jason of, I value, let's just say, the environment. And we see that conversation a lot, especially from the left. Let's think tank this a little bit. Like, how do we attack the idea that, oh, Bitcoin uses too much energy? I don't want to see us shift from the system we have now to a system that's going to require even more energy to be used in a time and place in history when we're trying to not use as much energy as we are. Like, what is the conversation there? I want to start with P, because I know where you're going to start, and I want to sort of have that discussed, and then Jason, I'll turn it to you.
Sure. Can you restate the question succinctly? You cut out right at the beginning.
Essentially, like, let's just say an individual that the three of us are talking to has expressed that they don't like Bitcoin because they love the environment and they think Bitcoin is bad for the environment.
Got it. Yeah, I would, just which button to press. I mean, there's a lot of different
ways. They don't want us to be using more energy.
Yeah, exactly. I think that there is a narrative which I consider to be bullshit, which is that we should not be using energy. We should not be expanding our ability to take energy that is locked up in various sources and use it to better, humans, basically, human society. I think that's a false thing, but I think the most repetitive arguments that are made are around the idea that Bitcoin uses too much energy. And it's easy to approach that from the perspective of like, clearly you don't know what you're talking about. You don't care about that actual item. You can mention things like Christmas lights use more energy than the entire Bitcoin network just over the holiday months. You can talk about clothes dryers and washing machines. 90% of people in the United States, or whatever the actual figure is, use clothes dryers and washing machines, and those consume just in the United States vastly more energy than the entire Bitcoin network does. There's all these things that but I actually don't think that is the most salient part of that kind of debunking, right? We shouldn't need to justify the energy cost of Bitcoin. The reality is, if you are buying electricity, if you are paying electricity, if you go to somebody and they say, I will sell you electricity at this rate, you should be able to do what you want with that electricity. End of conversation, end of story. And for some reason, people don't understand that. They love to just harp on this. And most of the facts and figures that are mentioned in these kinds of arguments are just totally spurious. That'd be my brief take, sort of brief. What do you think, Jason?
I mean, there's a ton to unpack there. I'll say in my book, the environmentalist chapter is the longest chapter.
As it should be.
I think as it should be, right? Like this is the number one thing. So I think that there's to your point, P, like the idea, like, okay, well, let's compare Bitcoin energy usage to other things. Like that might resonate with some people, but I agree with you. That's not really the way to go, because like those things can change and Bitcoin energy use can change. I think that there's also, I agree with you completely. Like, I'm going to go out and buy electricity at a going rate, and this is the market rate. I'm going to buy, I could do whatever I want with it. Like, I agree with that logic. I also don't, from a like just first principles standpoint, like I don't necessarily think that like it's wrong for people to use their free speech to like pressure people or make, help people make other decisions with what, whether or not they're using energy in a good way. So I think that there's a good conversation to be had. You're not like limiting people's ability to use the energy, but maybe making them think about it is important. I think for me, the number one thing that resonates with the people I talk to is to really think carefully about like, what is the energy being used for? Like, is it an important, useful use of that resource? And, and I think that the baseline assumption by most progressive people who know very little about Bitcoin is that because it's this fake internet money, that any use of electricity is a waste. So I think that the number one step for me when I'm having conversations with people like on the political left is to really get them to understand that like there is value and functionality and use in this technology. It's important technology for Americans. It's important technology all around the world. And it's actually very valuable to use electricity for important things. The conversation extends past that to say, all right, well, if we can get people on board, I'm glossing over this, but if I can get people on board with saying, all right, well, the energy use is important, then I think it's absolutely a valid argument or discussion to have. Say, okay, well, is it efficient? Is it green? Can it be more green? Like, can it help the environment? Like, what is the damage? I don't think there's problems in discussing those things, but that has to come sort of second. I think that you have to really convince somebody that the energy use is not a waste just inherently. I think that a lot of people start from that base assumption. And nobody's going to be able to reach them if their opening line is, well, I think that climate change is wrong, or I think ESG is a hoax, or whatever it is. You're just not going to reach those people. And you can believe those things and you can have that, but if your goal is to actually change a heart and mind about somebody who really truly cares about the environment, you have to have a good faith conversation with them from where they are. And I think the energy usage and like the importance of why Bitcoin exists and why we need it is a good place to start, because otherwise it doesn't really matter that it uses less than Christmas lights. It's just not useful, and any use is a waste. So I think that that's one of the venues that I would start that conversation. And of course, it would be a very long, complicated conversation with most people that care about this stuff,
And I want to also just, unpack this idea around like how energy is, like how we extract energy from the world to then go out and use. And I talk a lot about this idea that the next iteration of clean energy, I want to like literally go past what we see now of like the solar, the wind, all of that. Whatever this next iteration of clean energy capture and utilization looks like, I will bet anyone dare I say a whole Bitcoin? Dare I say a whole Bitcoin? I will bet that it comes out of the Bitcoin.
You better lever
mining
up,
space.
bro. You got to go
I know,
100x or bust.
Use leverage.
Yeah. If there's anything we've learned from what's going on right now in the markets, it's
I mean,
lever
hang on,
up.
let me just quickly check if I can afford. Yeah, I mean, look, it's 16.5. Bitcoin's price right now is at 16.5. So like I theoretically could, I would comfortably bet a whole Bitcoin saying the
Oh my God.
next iteration of clean energy utilization capture will come out of the Bitcoin mining space because they're incentivized to
Yes.
find this.
Yeah.
Like
Right.
we are watching, we talk, like shout out my boy over in Hawaii, Nathaniel Harmon, who we're going to hang out with this weekend.
Mhm.
He is working on geothermal energy capture to then utilize that energy capture to then go out and mine Bitcoin with that. It's amazing to see how creative Bitcoiners can be. And then it goes a step further too. It's not just about, okay, how do we power the Bitcoin miners? Well, there's energy that's being wasted even in the process of just powering these miners. How do we then capitalize on this extra energy? How many different videos do we see of conversations happening around, oh, I used Bitcoin miners to keep my water heater going, or
Right.
hey, I installed Bitcoin miners in my floor to have heated floors now, or I'm even seeing like conversations happening that someone seems to have figured out a way to desalinate salt water off of the heat of Bitcoin miners. If that actually has happened, like the world has changed forever.
Right.
Like this issue of, oh, we're about to run out of water in California and Arizona, like is not going to be a thing. I'm telling you full stop, like it won't be. And it is truly remarkable what we see come out of this space. And there is my favorite statistic to point out. There is a direct correlation between the amount of energy a society uses and how advanced, historically speaking, that society has reached or has become. So if with that in mind, any sort of climate activist who says we use too much energy and we need to use less genuinely does not understand humanity, the cycles of humanity, and wants to see humanity grow. In fact, I would argue that they are probably an alien or even one of our robot overlords that is controlling the matrix, trying to trick you into believing that energy is a bad thing when there's clear data that shows otherwise. But trust the science. Am I right, guys?
100%. I agree.
I'm
There's
not
really
sure
only three
I
options.
did the alien theory, but I do agree. I do agree with the rest of it. And I do think that like the argument of like we use too much energy is a well-intentioned argument, but I think it's faulty, right? And that's when I think like you can have a good faith conversation with another person across the table and say, all right, well, let's break that down. What do you mean by use too much energy? And then, all right, well, do you mean use too much dirty energy, polluting too much, whatever it is. And like you can get towards a Bitcoin angle around that. And to your point, Q, like the absolute innovation of the technology is like I've had to rewrite my environmental chapter like 3 times because like every time I feel like I'm done with it, oh, they're using like oceans now to like mine Bitcoin, whatever it is. So Nate Harmon is like literally just using the water different, like the temperature in the ocean to like,
I know, it's so fucking
create
cool.
energy. And I think there's also valid arguments say, hey, like there's a lot of wasted energy out there that can be monetized and, used for this purpose. And there's no other purpose or use case for the energy that's out there, and whether or not you like it, like the energy is being wasted, like literally just burnt off into the atmosphere. So if we can monetize some of that energy and promote the growth of like new renewable green energy sources, then that's really like a win-win for everybody. And there's no other technology that has the ability to do that, right? Like Bitcoin mining is location agnostic. They're going to move. They're motivated to get the lowest energy price. And, for the foreseeable future, it's going to be like green energy and like wasted energy sources that are stranded. And you're not competing against other customers. You're not driving up the price of electricity. You're not taking electricity out of like orphanages and hospitals. Like you're actually just like monetizing stuff that's going to get wasted otherwise. So that conversation with people who are coming from like a good place, like they want to do the right thing, like you can probably get there with somebody who can appreciate like their feelings and their thinking about it, and then sort of guide them in the right direction about how Bitcoin mining actually helps the grid, and it helps renewables, and it helps energy, and it helps us like come up like you said, use more energy to build society, but do it in a renewable, sustainable, green way which is what, the people that we're talking about, my target audience, that's what they want. So.
Or even like, because I think we just triggered our entire Rumble audience and like
Yep.
half of our normal audience anyways with some of those catchphrases. Like it
Yep.
can be as simple as like feeding that narrative to the people. Going back to the beginning of the conversation, the people who value those things need to hear that about Bitcoin to better understand and accept it. And for those of you who think climate change doesn't exist, green energy, not like all that stuff is hocus pocus, baloney, whatever, you still need and require Bitcoin miners to have access to cheap and ready and not ready, but cheap and consistent energy sources so that they can continue to operate the blockchain as a whole. Otherwise, you are just in the same boat as everyone else when no one has access to energy and all Bitcoin miners get shut down, which will not happen because thank God Econo Alchemist is somewhere out there in the world for all of us.
He's going to keep it going. And I think that goes just to reiterate the point that I made, like, who do you want explaining Bitcoin to these, like this audience, right? Like, is it somebody who can just relate with them and say, yeah, I care about the environment, and not all Bitcoiners agree with like my environmental stance, but like, if I can connect with people and I can have that conversation with people, and sort of get them starting to think about Bitcoin in a more serious way instead of it's a waste, it's only bad, right? Then I think that's a win for the network. It's a win for those people. It's a win for everybody. And it just increases adoption. It increases like understanding and education about Bitcoin. And I don't know, I think that you should probably be in favor of that if you care about Bitcoin. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's talk now a little bit more about sort of the international ongoings with Bitcoin. And in particular, I want to talk, I mentioned Russia and Iran in particular. These are not necessarily allies to the United States, especially in 2022.
Right.
And, I had a conversation a few months back with a dear friend from college. And, after he had already called Bitcoin a Ponzi scheme to me, then I was like, right, but we live in the country with the global reserve currency. Like other countries in the world are already adopting and using, like El Salvador has adopted Bitcoin. Like you have Iran and Russia announcing that they are going to accept Bitcoin for international trade. And then he goes, yeah, like we do a lot of business with Russia, Iran, and El Salvador. Like you're not selling me on this. So what about this sort of growing uncomfort, if you will, with our adversaries adopting Bitcoin?
Yeah, I think that I don't know that El Salvador is an adversary, but
So let me rephrase that. So the WEF and the IMF,
sure,
they are viewed as the worst of the worst.
Right. And I think that like the thing that the common thread through all of the countries and the nation states that you mentioned are that either they've been sanctioned or sort of had some punitive action taken against them, and like the dollar or the SWIFT network has been weaponized. Or in the case of El Salvador, they're a dollarized nation since like the turn of the century, and they're at the whim of sort of the Federal Reserve without any sort of representation whatsoever of having to use dollars. Central African Republic is using CAF francs, and so all of those, like either through sanctions or some sort of penalty or being forced to live under some sort of some other nation's monetary technology and hegemony. All of these nations are connected in that way. So it does not surprise me that these are the places that you're seeing Bitcoin adoption pick up, right? And as we say, like Bitcoin is money for enemies. I think that the unease in like our adversaries using Bitcoin, like if you're thinking about Russia or Iran, I have absolutely, like, there's no love lost for me, like with Russia. Like, it's not like I'm a Vladimir Putin fan. But I do think that a lot of Americans don't really have a clear picture on like the devastation that sort of dollar hegemony has like wreaked all over this world for decades. The advantage it's given America at the expense of not only people in other countries, like poor people all around the world are like damaged by the fact that the dollar is the global reserve currency and that we have sort of leverage over every single other nation. But it also like has trickle down effects to like harm poor people in America. So I think that the ability to say there is another way, like there is an ability for not just Russia to use Bitcoin and this other sort of monetary technology. It's absolutely it's a possibility for like all nations to do this. And if you really want to buy into like the idea that the dollar should be the global reserve currency and that the United States should have this privileged place in the international sort of like economic order, you really have to grapple with a lot of like heinous things that have happened since, well, the last century, to either leverage that privilege, preserve that privilege, keep it in place. There's a lot of trouble there too. So I think that in my mind and in my thinking, like the idea that there's an option that's stateless, that you can sort of go and adapt, anybody can adopt it and use it, is a better technology for the world. And it might actually like damage some important wealthy people in America if we make that change. But that's my thinking about it, is that we've caused a lot of hurt and damage all over the world by promoting and maintaining the dollar in its hegemonic state. So I'm ready for something new.
I was pulling a pee for a second, but no, I mean, you laid it out so perfectly that you're talking about two countries that have been sanctioned, who are disincentivized now from using the dollar, that the dollar has been weaponized now for the better part of the last 50 to 60 years, to a point where it's almost like, well, if you don't bend to our will, not only will we not give you access to the dollars, but we're probably going to overthrow you and kill you without like overtly saying it.
Yeah.
It's an interesting thing, and we see this conversation on Rumble a lot. So this maybe isn't necessarily the progressive bend, but I do think there's a tone in there, or at least a part of this conversation that progressives sort of align with. So the part that I see from the Rumble crowd a lot is this idea in the narrative that, the people who control the money are not just going to be like, oh yeah, here you go, here's the money. Like, yeah, we don't want to control the money printers anymore. It wasn't actually as fun and dandy as we made it out to seem. So sure, you guys think you could do better. Here you go, Bitcoiners. Like, no. Jim Johnson's over on Rumble. You ask this question all the time. Today's the day we are going to address it just for you. How do progressives see the exact same question? Oh, Jim Johnson, are you triggered? Are you triggered that you actually think like a progressive? Because let me tell you, you actually do. You, sir, are a progressive, because progressives in the same fucking vein are like, right, but we already have like a currency and it works. Like, why do we need to change it? Like, what? Like,
it doesn't
works
work
for me. But like, it works for me. So like, why do we need to change it? It's the same fucking thing. If you think the powers that be will not overturn the money, that's the same conversation, in my opinion, as right, but the money works. So why do we need to change it? So how do we address that broad topic?
I mean, is that a question for me?
I present it to you, or P, if you want to take a jab at it, by all means.
No, I want to hear Jason.
Yeah, I devote I devote a whole chapter in my book to like, the cost of dollar hegemony, right? And like, what is it that when we say, oh, the US dollar is backed by the US military, like what do we mean by that? It means like you said, like, well, if you're gonna do some sort of geopolitical move that undercuts the dollar as a reserve currency, then like in a couple of weeks, you're not going to be in power anymore, and it's going to be sort of hush hush, and we're going to make it happen. I think that there's plenty of progressive people who take a look around the world and say, like, yeah, we are, like, America is taking advantage of these other countries in sort of an economic way, in a geopolitical way, leaning on countries to do their bidding, vote with them at the UN or whatever it is. Like, there's all sorts of political levers that happen, and I don't want to say all, but a lot of it can be tied back to the money and the fact that like we control the money, and we get to sort of control the world reserve currency. And so a lot of damage has been done, and it affects poor people and disadvantaged communities all over the world. And I think that's something that progressive people like care about. don't generally know a lot about. Like our American media doesn't talk a lot about this. And I don't know that like progressives are like just primed anymore just to believe, oh, America is the good guy and we're going to do whatever they say, whatever geopolitical situation happens, I'm just going to like, it's my patriotic duty to stand by that, right? Like they're questioning stuff and they're saying, all right, like the behaviors that I'm seeing all around the world is not something I'm very proud of. So I think that like the pump is primed for progressive people to say, hey, like this is another thing. This is another problem with the current system, right? Like it works for me is not deep enough thinking. Like the dollar and the dollar system and like the policies that uphold it are already broken and damaged and hurt people all around the world. And if you're not willing to think about that deeply, then like why are you caring about the environment? Like, why are you caring about like equality? Why are you caring about people if you're not caring about like people in other countries that are damaged by these policies? So I think that there's an audience there. I think that there's a lot of education to be done. I don't know that your typical like voter who just went out yesterday and voted for like, straight down the Democratic column is thinking about these things. So there's opportunity there, to educate them.
P, do you have as much faith in the average American to be educated as much as Jason does?
On which specific axis?
Just, oddly, I'll open the door to just anything because what's the famous George Carlin quote of like, just realize how dumb the average American is, and then remember that half of them are dumber than that.
I mean, it's really tough. There are so many things that are happening in all of our day-to-day lives. I think it's very easy to fall prey to the attacks on attention that are constantly being leveraged against us, right? Systems are in place to distract you, not even necessarily nefariously, right? But everything, as I like to say so often, you show me the incentives, I'll show you the outcome. Systems that effectively get you angry, get you excited, steal your attention, those make the most money. It's the reason that TikTok, like if I open TikTok, it's like I feel like my eyeballs are being attacked. It's so just like in your face, designed to like pull all your attention immediately. Twitter is the same way, though on a different axis. All these systems are there. Then you layer in the narratives that are actively being pushed, that are designed to distract you, convince you of things that aren't true around, just pick any random WEF agenda and it's fucking atrocious and horrible, right? Literally, you will own nothing and you will be happy. It's horrifying stuff. I guess I'm saying all this because we are all, each of us, fighting an uphill battle. And I think it's really important that we empathize with everyone. Even we are incredibly lucky that the circumstances in our life have allowed us to discover Bitcoin at the various points that we've discovered it. And a lot of that is luck, And I think that we can empathize with people who haven't yet got there. And I think that we can hold ourselves accountable and that moral imperative I mentioned at the very beginning for educating them. So I do have faith in the average person. I do have faith that we can all be brought into Bitcoin. There will always be, bad apples, but the majority of people, Bitcoin is actually so fucking compelling. It's like if you can just find the specific wedge, the specific problem that Bitcoin solves for each group or for each individual, they immediately get it and they're like, oh my God, and their head explodes and they are fully orange pilled. And I think that's why I'm so excited about this conversation in this book, is because this is there isn't enough progressive media there is not enough media that is specifically trying to bring Bitcoin to people that have a progressive viewpoint. And so in short, I have faith. And it's not blind faith. That's not to say that doesn't take a ton of effort, a ton of energy. We're here every day talking about Bitcoin, but I think we can get there. And on that note, Jason, I'm curious, obviously you've taken the time to break down your book that's going to be coming out soon. And I want to talk about that a little bit. Like, when is it coming out? When can people expect it? Where can they read it? But before we get into that, if you had to list like 3 topics that you feel are the most misunderstood from a progressive viewpoint, what do you think those are?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So, you mean like sort of what are the hurdles to get somebody
Yeah,
who's
yeah. Sorry, I should
progressive
have said it
into
that way.
Bitcoin? Yeah,
Yeah, someone's like, you meet them at Thanksgiving, they're like, "Oh, I heard Bitcoin eats children
right,
and babies," you know.
right.
But what do they actually say?
Yeah. So honestly, like, I have these are the people I'm around all the time, right? And these are like I'm talking to people who have the same bumper stickers on their car as me. So I the conversations follow the same sort of pattern, right? Like number one, A1A is the environment. Like this is the FUD that's going out there and controlling sort of the initial conversation. Believe it or not, we're still hearing like criminals like use it. So like that's not hard to I know, but again, like you said, like everybody sort of finds it in their own time, so they have to
Absolutely.
work through
And
these things, right?
that's a strong narrative
Um,
that's being pushed.
and then I think that there's just a general sort of a skepticism about the fact that this is something that's on the internet that has made other people money, right? And so like whenever you're talking about like a system that exists on computers that has made people money, then like there's you say like a healthy skepticism. Like I need to really learn a lot about this before I'm going to sort of like push all the chips into it. I think those are the hurdles, and not like notice like not a lot of them are about like actual progressive values. Like it's just like the environmental thing is obviously. The other is just like normal things that might like trip up anybody who's trying to get into Bitcoin. The I think that the number one thing about um, like a left-leaning person out there, and I'm not talking, just to be clear, I'm not talking about like established like elected Democrats. I'm talking about like people who vote for those people because like they really think that's the best choice, right? I'm talking about like normal people out in the real world. Um, you know, they see the system is broken and wrong and unfair and advantaging the few at the expense of the many. I think all of that's true. And I think that they just sort of have limited scope about like what's the cause of that. And I think that, what I explain in the book is that, voting for a liberal politician to fix these problems is just turning dials within the current system. Like you're just trying to make things a little bit more fair in the broken system. Like, and so you're not really getting anywhere, or you're not making huge advancements. And Bitcoin represents this whole other system. It's a whole different game, right? So instead of just sort of like handicapping, nudging, adjusting, turning the dial on this whole broken thing that exists that exists now, we have an opportunity to kind of explore a whole new game, whole new system that's already more fair, more transparent, more helpful, makes more sense right from the beginning. And I think that that's the opportunity for the progressive person, like the pre-coiner who's a liberal, is to say all these things that you don't like about how the world works right now is tied into how the money is broken. And you might not see it because the politicians certainly aren't telling you. And the politicians are motivated to keep you ignorant about that idea. But like all of those things are tied into how the money is broken. And that's a huge opportunity. And that was something that like right-leaning libertarians picked up on a lot quicker. But it's not like there aren't people on the left who are like, yeah, like this whole thing is like messed up. Like how do we fix it? So
I love it.
a long answer to your question.
No, it was good. It was solid.
Yeah.
What do you think is the weirdest? Maybe not the weirdest. The a piece of FUD against Bitcoin that you are surprised how often it still comes up when you're in these conversations.
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting. I mean, and again, not to repeat it, but like energy stuff is number one. So
Yeah,
we
of
just
course.
sort of put that aside, right? I think that I've had conversations with people just like we were just talking about, and like this person will agree with me, like, yeah, the system's broken and it's not fair, and like the U.S. is like leveraging an advantage over other countries, and that's not fair, and like the Cantillon effect is making rich people richer, and that's not fair, and like just agreeing with everything I say and be like, yeah, but like like, who's to say that like the whole thing doesn't get unplugged and it's going to unwind? And I'm like, like, you know what I mean? Like they're just like, they're essentially like literally just like orange pilled, and then they just make a left turn at the very end. So I just, part of it is sort of the technical understanding, like how does it work? How do you know it's secure? The fact that it hasn't been hacked, all this stuff is part of the conversation, but it's just really kind of, and the idea that, that the news highlights these things, like what happened yesterday, like, oh, another exchange collapse, and that means Bitcoin is bad or something, right? Like it's just low information people who don't know a lot and are just going to sort of be stuck in their ways. So,
I wanted to bring this up. I got to shift the topic, but because, this has been a story we've been covering since Friday, the reports we had yesterday of Binance offering to purchase FTX.com pending due diligence. There are reports coming out of the Wall Street Journal that Binance is going to be pulling out of this deal based on said due diligence. The rumor mill is, I've seen everything from FTX owes $500 million all the way to they owe $6 billion. So that's the spread we got on this FTX nightmare. If you thought these Bitcoin prices are the bottom, I have bad news. I have really bad news if you thought this was the bottom.
Oh, Jesus.
But again, it's based on the perception of the market, not the actual value of Bitcoin. Because I think we were talking about yesterday, like FTX does not actually own very much Bitcoin. It's not like they're selling Bitcoin and dumping it on the market, correct?
Right.
That's correct. However, this was a really important thing I noticed, or I caught this little tidbit from Twitter. FTX still was holding Bitcoin, not as sort of on their balance sheet, but clients were holding their Bitcoin in the exchange itself. That has depleted. There were 20,000 Bitcoin on FTX that are no longer there. So whether that's people were liquidating, getting spooked, or if people were hopefully self-custodying, sending it to some sort of cold storage wallet and becoming their own independent sovereign individual in a bank, I hope it's the latter. But if it's the former, just sell me your cheap sats, my friends. Like,
that's right. Yeah. And I mean, I'm not like, part of this, I'm grateful that I don't need to really be an expert, right? Like I just buy my Bitcoin, put it in my cold storage, and then you just don't buy with leverage. You don't buy more than you can afford to lose, right? So you just like, it's all there. But I think that news stories like this, and what, like, we've been sort of immersed in it, for the last few days. Somebody who's just sort of like just getting into Bitcoin right now is like totally freaked out, right? They see the price tank, they see these news stories, they don't really understand the connection between like, what's this FTX, what's this Binance, what's Bitcoin? Like, I hear Bitcoin is broken, like all of that stuff, right? It's just like I said, it's low information, consumers or people who are just getting started, right? And through like really no fault of their own, they don't understand. And I get text messages from people like, I've orange pill. I got like 3 or 4 yesterday. Like, what's happening? And so like one by one, I had to like sort of text like a quick version, like, here's what's happening. Nothing's wrong with Bitcoin. You know what I mean? Like that kind of stuff. So, it's just like, I guess that's the responsibility you take on when you orange pill people, right? You got to calm them down sometimes. So.
Totally. We were talking about it at the very beginning of today's episode too, with, what is causing this price downturn. Bitcoin has seemingly recovered 17K. I say seemingly because by the end of my mini rant, it could very well have gone all the way to 18K, or it could go down to 15K. Who fucking knows right now? And Pete presented the question of, what is the reason that this is happening? To your point, like, Jason, I yesterday posted on my Instagram feed, like, hey, if you have money in FTX, anything, whether it's a cryptocurrency or just like you have dollars there, like, get it off, like put it somewhere else. If you can put it in Bitcoin, take it to cold storage. DMs overflowing. Is this the end of Bitcoin? Is this the end of crypto? Like, should I just sell everything? Mm-hmm. And like, while we may be sort of able to see things and are aware of the ongoing news in real time, the everyman is not. People don't devote their lives to this, unfortunately, in the way that we do. And I think that's what we're seeing in real time. We're seeing, to your point, people who are not in this because they see the full potential of Bitcoin. They see the like, oh, I could be a USD millionaire if
Right.
I have just enough Bitcoin and hold it for just long enough. Like I'll be a millionaire in dollar terms. Let me tell you, by the time you're a millionaire in dollar terms, because of the 0.0001 Bitcoin you hold, you got bigger fucking problems because a gallon of milk is going to cost you $1.5 million USD.
Yeah. And I think to the wider point, right? Like this, on one level, this is all good for the right. We're wiping out like these companies that are taking risky bets, and like we're going to emerge stronger from this. The price drop is going to like put more pressure on miners. So like mining companies have to like make decisions and like be efficient or go out of business. Like there's no bailouts for that, right? So all of this is like good. There's absolutely nothing that has changed about the Bitcoin protocol. Like I get people now that like they've like just in real life people that know me and know that I'm writing a book, like they relish the opportunity to come up to me in the hallway and say, oh, like Bitcoin's down. And like, as if like this is something that affects me or something, right? And like, well, no, it's like TikTok, 10 minutes, it's up, it's still going. Like the idea, like what you think Bitcoin is down means is not what I think Bitcoin is down means, right? Bitcoin is up and running and working is the same way that it did yesterday. And so like, I mean, it should be obvious that if the fundamentals of the network and the technology haven't changed, then what we have right now is an opportunity, right?
Yeah.
Set up your automatic buys and go with it.
See, Jason, you explained that so well to reuse my favorite quote for that average American intellect. That was really helpful for the people who are above the average American intellect, not so much for the people below. For the smooth brain people who just sit there and look at price, who can't even put two and two together and recognize or realize like, oh, this has literally happened in the history of Bitcoin. Every single time it goes through this cyclical motion of all-time high to a new low, to a new all-time high, to a new like intermediary low, or however. I don't even feel like getting like hyper technical about this, because I want this to be a conversation that anyone can access and understand without being overwhelmed. Like, we see the narrative Bitcoin is dead. Bitcoin Magazine sends out the meme all the time of these are all the different price points that
Right.
mainstream media or different pundits have said Bitcoin is dead, and it's literally like the whole chart up and down. I guess where I want to take the question, Jason, is, do you think some normies or the conversation in normie land will start to turn into, see, Bitcoin was a scam, like don't touch Bitcoin? Or because I at least feel like in this iteration of the bear market, you haven't seen places like CNBC turn around and stop discussing Bitcoin and Bitcoin mining. You actually still continue to see them discuss the price of Bitcoin on a day-to-day basis, no different than they discuss the price of the NASDAQ, Dow Jones, and S&P 500. They've essentially validated it in the financial sort of conversation. Do you feel like, crazy drawdowns yet again for how many bear markets technically do we have now? Like 4, 7, 101? I don't know however old P is however many bear markets Bitcoin will have.
Sure.
But the point I'm trying to get to essentially is like, is this going to just be another one of those moments where, the fair weather Bitcoin fans will look at things and say like, oh, see, like Bitcoin crashed. Whereas those of us who are truly convicted will be like, oh no, this is that generational buying opportunity that we've been waiting the last 2 years for.
Right. And I think that ultimately, like anybody without conviction about Bitcoin, right? There's people out there who don't have a conviction about Bitcoin because they don't understand it yet and they haven't learned, they haven't been exposed. And then there's people who own it because they think they're going to get sort of fiat rich, right? Like in both of those cases, I think that you do run the risk still of saying like, oh, see, like it's broken, it's dead. And like, that's why it's a meme, right? Because it keeps happening. I do think at some point in the future, and it's hard to say when, like we see that Bitcoin's the only thing left, right? Like everything else is been a scam or dropped down or died off. And then eventually you have a turning point where people, and like just the analogy I used earlier, right? Like the internet and cell phones and email, like all of these things sort of creep into the popular culture. Like people start using them. like Bitcoin is going to probably be like the back rails of a lot of financial things in like 5-10 years. People aren't even going to be like understanding that like they're really actually using Bitcoin. Like, it's just going to sort of seep into popular culture and all of that. So I think that eventually we hit a turning point, and like we don't need to worry about the meme anymore. I don't think that today's that day. I think that, based on like you said, like the DMs I'm getting and like the messages I'm getting from friends and family, like, or people who are sort of like thinking that like Bitcoin is a problem, and then they're sort of like, still, spiking the football. All of those suggest that we're still in the stage where it's like, all right, well, Bitcoin's broken or whatever. So what's the key, right, is like getting more people with the conviction about Bitcoin and truly understand it, right? Like if we can just sort of grow adoption, increase education about Bitcoin, get more people interested in learning more about it, that's exactly what like stops it, right? So we're going to reach a tipping point. I don't know when that is. It's not yet, though. We're still on it. We haven't tipped.
So I want to present a scenario again from the Rumble crowd, just the tangible asset argument. Because, as we're bearing witness to what will be the worst global recession ever known it by our generation, after we've already lived through 2, 3. P, how many recessions have you lived through? 8? Because you were around for the Great Depression.
It's 69.
69. Okay. So P is our resident Great Depression expert, having lived through it both as a toddler and as an adult.
Yeah, everybody knows this. I'm a Highlander. I live forever. These are facts.
So with that sort of in mind, let's play out this scenario where, all right, I don't know, Jason, have you read The Mandibles?
I have not read The Mandibles.
Ooh, oh, you got to read The Mandibles.
Highly recommend. It's
so good.
I'm writing it down right now.
Okay.
It's amazing. But the long and the short of it is an elite family, like truly elite, like to the point where like they have monogrammed like forks and knives type of stuff. As the dollar just completely collapses and we deal with hyperinflation, like this family now has to deal with the fact that like, hey, like you're just a normal person. You are no longer part of this like exclusive elite club. Mm-hmm. And like the one sibling who decided years ago to like just circumvent civilization, say adios to the city, and bought a farm and started farming is like the most, like, at least he's able to survive. He's able to grow his food. He's able to do what he needs to do in this type of scenario, because everyone on Rumble just thinks society is about to crumble and that, this is the iteration where humanity will fail. Cause humanity has failed so many times in the past that history will dictate that we will fail again. Literally humans are the most like successful being on the planet, minus I think bacteria, given the fact that how far we've come and grown. P, will you trade me your chickens for my Bitcoin stack in the event that, society has crumbled and there's no food at the grocery store? Specifically, Nietzsche. I want Nietzsche.
I mean, yeah, will I trade you a chicken for Bitcoin? Yeah, sure. I'll sell you one if I have the ability to do so, but it's going to be, let's be really clear. Cause in this scenario, Bitcoin is going to be worth like the today equivalent of like $5 million of fucking Bitcoin. So you're going to have to, pay me in today's Bitcoin price. That's the only way it's happening. We're locking this in now. So I want like a full Bitcoin for this one chicken, which is going to be produce an egg every 1 to 3 days. And it's going to save your family's life.
Can I name my firstborn after you?
No, I don't give a shit.
The price.
I want that Bitcoin. It's the only thing I'll take.
See, so it is a tangible asset to the right person, to the right buyer. And that's something I want to talk about is liquidity. Good luck trying to sell all of your houses in the middle of a housing collapse, or the JPEG issues of, oh, I think this is worth X number of dollars. Well, you can think whatever you want, but if no one's going to pay you that price, so to your point, P, I will not pay you $5 million for one chicken. So maybe this is
your loss.
What I thought.
It's your loss. But I want to, as we kind of wind down, Jason, I want to ask those questions just that we talked about just a second ago. So can you tell everybody what your book is called again, when it's going to be coming out, where they can get access to it. In the meantime, how they can stay in touch with you and follow you as you continue your journey to orange pill all the progressives in the United States and the world, also space.
Yeah, that's the goal, right? Like everybody will, in 50 years, they're not going to be called Bitcoiners, be called people, right? So that's the hope. So yeah, if you want to follow along with me, my Twitter handle is on the screen there. I think it's at Jason Maier, and I just you can sort of get updates and things like that on Twitter. If you want to check out the book or take a look at sort of the summary or description of it, there's a website called bitcoinprogressive.com. So you can head over there and take a look at the book. And then there's a couple of other like podcasts I've been on just to get a fuller sense, right? Like we can't hit everything on this one interview. So that's a good place to go. I think the book is going to be out. The goal is this coming summer. So like I said at the beginning, I'm a teacher. I work on an academic schedule. I busted my hump like all summer to just get as much written as I could. I'm in a good spot now, and I wake up every morning at 5 a.m. so I can actually work on my book before my kids wake up. So that's my chunk of time every day that I work on it. All that said, like the book comes out this summer. There's a little window there, hopefully sooner rather than later. And honestly, the goal is not to change anybody's political views or convince people that Bitcoin is for progressive people only. It's just trying to get no coiners who are turned off by like the resources that are out there and give them a new resource, get them orange pill, get them into Bitcoin, have them, like I say, like my book is not the last book they're going to read. It's the first book they're going to read about Bitcoin. So I'm just trying to get people from 0 to 1. So
good stuff.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so
do you
much
want
for
me to
joining
talk about the chickens or like the?
Would you trade a whole Bitcoin for a chicken right now?
Well, I haven't checked the price in 5 minutes, so who the hell knows how much a Bitcoin is?
We're as we want. So we're back under 17K. Like I said, like
yeah. All right.
Price doesn't matter.
I think I'll keep the Bitcoin and figure out a different chicken strategy for myself.
You answered correctly. Correctly.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you guys. I had a lot of fun. You asked some really good questions.
Well, thank you so much. We try. We do our best. I want to remind everyone that especially in these moments when the Bitcoin price is going down, it's more important than ever to stay optimistic. Follow, the people on Twitter. Follow the people that are going to imbue you with hope. We try to be those people. If you enjoy this, give us a follow, but also check out Bitcoin Magazine, where you will find incredible articles, including the ones which I've been posting in the chat, which is how to get your Bitcoin off of exchanges. It is extremely important. FTX will not be the last exchange to go bust in this period. We are going through unprecedented turmoil in the markets, the macroeconomic environments, and in Bitcoin. Don't get fucked. Do not leave your Bitcoin on exchanges. Make sure you know how to take it off safely and effectively. Don't freak out and just go do it and lose all your Bitcoin, because again, there are no backsies if you do. On that note, I want to remind everybody that you can use code BMLive to get access to Bitcoin 2023 tickets on bitcoinmagazine.com. You can also use code BMLive to save 10% on the print edition of the magazine, which is incredible. Check it out. We'll see you tomorrow. Same time, same place.